Yep, hood's popped on the parts magnet again. Can't understand why. Well, let's go right on into it. Sometime in the midwinter, I came out one day and the battery that was in the car, it didn't want to do anything. So I had to go rob the battery out of that white Ford Ranger that I bought. And that was a good one. It was a diehard. So I stuck it in here and it's been running ever since, even though it's a smaller battery. But I want to upgrade this whole setup that I got right here. As you can tell, I've already put in that wire. Well, this is one of the hardest things that I've done in a while. Not routing the cable, not drilling the hole, but getting that huge rubber grommet. Let's see it back in there. You can't see it. Getting that huge rubber grommet in the firewall. That was the hard part. So now I gotta run this wire going through the rest of the car. Well, I got that wire to run all the way to that wire goes to the back of the car, and it is aught gauge, 0 gauge wire. That's going to go to a secondary battery. Now, I've disconnected some stuff and taken out the battery. I'm going to go ahead and probably take out the battery tray so I can move what I need to move and maybe clean that up a little bit. Now, what I need to move is this, and this. This is the alternator wire, and it makes a lot of sense because the alternator wire, because it's just huge. It starts all the way over there, it comes across, goes right down through here, goes all the way into the fender well, all the way back in here behind the headlight. So after it comes back out of the headlight, it comes back out to a fusible link that goes back into a red wire to the battery. Okay, now I want to add this piece, and what this is a battery isolator. I picked this up at a swap meet. It was brand new, just without the box, and I originally wanted to mount it right here. It's like, yeah, that's gonna look good. Oh, wait a minute. Yep, hood ain't gonna close, or if it is, it's gonna do some damage. So I figured if I slid all this stuff over, I could mount it right down here, and I think it's low enough that it should pass everything. And my idea is to maybe put some rubber caps or something over top of the ends after I get done. So I got to get all this stuff moved down. Got to start getting this mounted. It's apparently going to need a ground. So I need to get this mounted. It's going to need a ground. I'm going to ground the base of it because this is all plastic. And the ground situation on this car is interesting. The ground comes from the battery and goes over to the inner structure of the fender wells. Okay. The other one goes all the way over. It goes down to the starter, which I assume grounds the motor. But nothing grounds the frame. The frame doesn't have a ground on it? Weird. So since I got the battery tray out, I kind of scrubbed down some of the rust on the top there, and since I can easily get to it right now, I'm probably going to go ahead and spray some of this rust reformer on it. I get this at Harbor Freight. This stuff does a pretty good job. Oh, when you shake it up, it doesn't have a ball in it, which is weird. Now this stuff isn't a paint, it's some kind of chemical. And what it does is it kind of turns the rust black, which seems to stop it. And what I try to do is go over it with a little bit of paint after it dries. I got everything moved down here. I cut a groove in here and slid this in and drilled a hole over here, put a nut on the back side like it was originally mounted up here. The other two I just zip tied together. This gives me enough slack. It should be back. It's out of the way. Now this is the alternator wire, of course, so that's going to get split probably right there for the box. And It should fit in there pretty good. There's so much background noise in this town. If it's not loud pipes, it's planes flying over or the train going by. Oh well. Hopefully everybody can still hear me. I'm sure you can. So, I've been playing around here, and that hole, there goes the train. Okay, maybe it's quiet enough now. So, that hole right there in the frame was already there. I took a tap and tried to ream a hole into it, and I got a bolt that'll pretty much fit. So, I'm going to use that as a ground post right here. I'm going to use that as a ground post and come up to the battery right there. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use this. Well, it's amp wire, but it's 4 gauge Scotchy ground wire. Yeah, I'm going to hook that in right there and come up to the battery. Remember what I said about loud pipes? Gotta love springtime. Alright, got the ground wire attached. Seems like it's on there pretty good, nice and tight. Ran some zip ties. I need to trim those off and put the battery tray back in. I cleaned it up a little bit. Doesn't look much better than what it did, but oh well. So I had to do some trimming on the battery box so everything would fit. I've got 3 of the 4 bolts in so far. But while I was here, I figured I'd go ahead and liven up those grounds a little bit before I put all that back together. Those are the factory ones. I got all the battery tray back together, so looks like it's time to cut that nasty unit off. Look at this one. This one's positive. It is corroded the whole bottom of the terminal off there. That's awesome. So, what I'm gonna try to do is use this Dremel cutoff and just cut those black wires. Tell you, this little bad boy, it's awesome. I don't know how many times this thing saved me. Well, I got 2 new terminals on there and put the battery back in, and the car fired right on up immediately. So now I got to get into mounting the battery isolator, which is going to involve me separating this and putting the battery isolator right here, running a ground to the isolator. Ground, ground, ground. Lincoln gets grounded. Seems like everything I'm doing on this requires an extra modification other than what I'm doing. So, this is a wire that's coming from the fuse box. I've never heard of these before and recently got them. They're called fuse taps, and it allows you to tap into a factory fuse and put a separate channel on it. So I need a wire to run over to that battery isolator. So got this all in, notched it so it would come out the side of it. Went to close the lid didn't close. It had 2 big old pieces of plastic trim pieces that I had to cut off. So hopefully this thing clips on. I need to do a little bit more trimming, but better than what it was. At least it's shutting now. It's starting to get dark on me, so I need to go ahead and finish up for the night. I ran that wire, which you can barely see, out of there. Ran it through some split loom all the way across the front of the car, back in behind the battery, right up to the on switch on the battery isolator. So basically when I turn on the car, it's going, like the ignition switch, it's going to turn this on and allow this to work properly. Now that we got sunlight today, I'm going to try to split this alternator cable and get this wired up. The alternator goes in on the middle one, and this one goes out to the main battery. So basically all I need to do is hook that one in right there and bring this one in right here. I got some clamps. Going to cut this with the Dremel most likely like I did the other one. Put the clamps on and go from there. So I've shaved this off. I've gone ahead and put my heat shrink tubing on. Now I have these Street Wires 4-gauge O-ring clamps from, I don't know, 15 years ago. They've been sitting in my garage, so I'm using them. You're supposed to have a very expensive crimper to put these on. I've never bought one of those crimpers because I really don't see the need. So I'm doing it the illegal way, the way you're not supposed to. And what I do is I'll take a pair of my regular clippers and crimp them down as hard as I can to hold it, which isn't very good. So they barely did anything. So I'll be right back. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this 5-pound hammer or 3-pound hammer or something, and something sturdy on the other side, and beat them together, which isn't too easy. It's a lot easier when you don't have the item attached to the vehicle. You can use the concrete or the ground. Yeah. That ain't coming off. If it is, that wire's coming off. So I've gotten this one wired up. This one goes over to the battery. Got the heat shrink on it. Got the split loom back and a nice little bit of electrical tape. It keeps it up off the fins. That's one of the things that I was worried about, because I don't know how hot this gets. This one is coming from the alternator. I need to tighten them up, put some zip ties on here. The factory ones are broken, so I just need to keep the stuff away from the motor and other lines. But I've gotten this one all hooked up. Now what I did is I fired up my vehicle a while ago, turned the key, car started up just like normal. I came around here and disconnected the positive. At that point, that means that the battery is not getting a charge, but the car is still getting power. So this is working. Well, I've got everything wired up here that I think it needs to be done for right now. I've got all of these hooked up. Now I do need to put some covers or something on here to keep them protected. And I've made this wire, which is the aught gauge, going over to a casing for a fuse, and I've taken that fuse out. So as of right now, there's no power going to the back of the car. Once I put this fuse in, and that means power will start going to the back. But as of right now, I'm keeping it safe and keeping that fuse out. So I've gotten pretty much everything up here buttoned up. Now I got to get the battery mounted in the trunk. This has become a pretty involved project. So I had to take out the back seat so I could get the amp out, the factory amp. I didn't want that anymore because I don't think it worked. I also took out the factory subwoofer that was up in the package shelf. As you can see, the big hole. And, of course, I've stripped out the trunk because I had to get in here to wire everything. I removed the spare tire mount so I could get my boards and everything to sit flat. Now, one of the main things I had to do was run a ground wire back here to the frame. So I used a hole saw and cut 2 holes in right here and then cut out the extra so I would have work room. And then ran the cable out through the side right here. Now this is aught gauge ground wire, and it is street wires. That will go up to the battery, which will be mounted up here. Now, I could have mounted the battery right here, and it would have saved me a lot of time and labor, but I want to keep as much trunk space as I can. And by mounting my stuff up here, it's allowing me to have a big open trunk space that I can carry stuff in. Now what I did back here at the ground wire is I drilled these holes. I found an area on the frame. I cleaned it up, as you can see. I drilled a hole down through it. I then used a tap on my drill and drilled threads into it. And put a bolt and, of course, the ground clamp. And like I said, this being more involved than probably what it should have been, I wanted to mount the battery up here. Well, I can't drill down because the gas tank's right immediately underneath of it. So, unless I want to take the gas tank out, I really don't want to mess with that. So, what I did is I built a ledge piece that attaches to the back wall and comes out flat. Now, it may not be the prettiest thing in the world. I built it out of scrap pieces. I'll throw up some of the photos so you can see kind of how I built it. It was literally built out of junk. Now what I did was take those pieces of scrap wood and I shot them together with staples. You can kind of see where they are. And then coated everything down with resin. Like fiberglass resin to make it all nice and sturdy. And as you can tell, it's pretty sturdy. Now, it's kind of rough. I gave it a little bit of sanding, then I just threw paint on it. This most likely will be covered with carpet, and this really won't be seen. And if it's that noticeable later on down the road, I might put some carpet or fabric or something over top of it to make it look a little pretty. I do have a extra Lincoln battery tray that I got out of a junkyard that fits in right here, just like the one that goes in the front. My amp is planning on sitting right here, my air compressor right here, and the air tank right here. Now that should leave me enough room to mount valves, and it also should leave me enough room to mount my wiring right here. Well, I've got it mounted in there. I went ahead and secured down the battery tray. I'm probably gonna have to take that back out when I put the carpet in, which is the next step. But I got a bolt in up the top, 2 lag screws going down into the wood, 2 more screws right there, and it really doesn't want to move. Next step is putting the carpet in and doing a little cutting. Alright, and this is the factory carpet piece. It's all one piece. It's molded. It goes in there. I don't know if Crown Victorias have these, but I know most of the Lincolns have them. It's pretty nice. I need to cut it. Right up in here is where my amp's gonna fit. But it seems like it tucks in there pretty nice. And I'm gonna have to cut over here where the battery goes. I'm thinking about shooting some staples into that wood just so it secures it down even more. I got everything cut in around. You kind of barely even notice that it's there. That's the look I was going for. Now this right here is a factory Lincoln battery box that goes in the front of the car. When I got this, it was out of a junkyard and been sun faded real bad, and when I cleaned it up, it looked real rough. So I gave it some splatter paint. And that's going to sit in right there. Got the battery tray mounted in there solid, ready for the battery. So I've ran my ground wire back in behind the carpet, up through a hole that was here from the factory, from the spare tire mount, up and goes right to my battery post. Just exact amount of wire. I've got the battery mounted in, and the factory, you know, you can't see it, but the little factory lock-in piece. I'm shaking the whole car, so I don't think it's going anywhere. Got my power wire coming in from the front. Need to put my terminals on. So these are the battery terminals I'm planning on using. I ordered these off of eBay last year. They are smaller diameter than what the aught gauge is, so I had to buy these reducers. The wire goes in here and crimps down and fits in. It's an interesting way to hook it up, but should work. So it's going to be kind of hard to film back in there doing that, so I'll see if I can get it all wired up and hit you back when I'm done. Now I've got most of the wiring done back here. Still need to hook up the positive terminal, but I want to put this fuse in up front and make sure that nothing catches fire when I hook up the thing, because if I hook it up and it starts acting up, catching fire, I'll pull it out, disconnect it immediately. I'm not going to be done with this project completely, because I still want to add in a circuit breaker over here in front of the battery. It's a 200 amp like the fuse that's up front, and just extra protection. But I need to get some ring terminals to fit that in, so that'll probably be in the next episode. So let's go ahead and get this fuse in up front. It's a good thing that it's got the battery isolator on there, because I've done touched that to the metal a couple times. So the battery isolator turns it off. It's a good thing I didn't have the battery hooked up to the back either. I like putting in fuses when they're not hooked up to the battery. A little bit safer. I've blown a few fuses hooking them up while they're live. You live and you learn. I'm probably going to take this out later, because I won't really have anything hooked up until I get that amp hooked up, and that'll be the next episode also. Alright, I'm going live. I don't hear anything arcing. This is kind of tedious. Okay, I don't see anything catching on fire. I don't hear anything arcing. Now, I really don't know if this setup's going to work until I have something with a current draw off of it, like a air compressor or a amplifier. So I guess we'll be able to test that in the next episode. Until then, please like, share, subscribe. Check out some of my older videos. And I appreciate you watching.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to work, cause my boss is a jerk, and I'm not even that paid.
Well, it's sitting here running. Nothing's caught on fire. I think I'm good.